urges citizens to recognize that suicide most often occurs when stressors exceeding the coping abilities of someone suffering from a mental health condition. To recognize that suicide is a preventable national, state, and community public health problem, and to promote awareness that there is no single cause for suicide. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was great.
Ms. Chilcutt, would you like to share a few words with the audience and also our members on television?
Please do.
Well, sure. I wanted to thank you, Mayor, for recognizing the importance of getting suicide prevention and awareness to get the conversation started in our community. I know that I became involved with the American Foundation for Suicide after losing my third friend that died by suicide. And as part of that, just trying to get the conversation started in the community, and this is how we can get that started. So I do appreciate this proclamation, and thank you.
Thank you for being here. Do you mind if we scoot in and have a couple of pictures with you? Thank you again for being here, Ms. Chilcutt. We appreciate it. Thank you so much.
It was 2 pages.
Item 6 on the agenda is approval of the minutes. 6A is consider approval of the minutes of the City Council meeting held on August the 13th, 2019. Any discussion on the item before I call for a motion? Hearing none, we'll call for a motion this time. We do have a motion for approval by Kevin Cleveland, second by Mayor Pro Tem Wilder. Any discussion on the item before we call for a vote? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote this time. Please indicate yea or nay when the opportunity presents itself. Minutes pass unanimously. Item 7 on the agenda is consent agenda items. We have 3 items on the agenda. Are there any that we would like to pull out and examine individually? No. We will consider the 3 as a pool. Any discussion on any of the items before we call for a motion? Hearing none, motion on the floor for approval by Curtis Tucker, second by Kevin Cleveland. Excuse me, Kevin. Any discussion before we call for a vote? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote at this time. Indicate yea or nay, please. Consent items pass unanimously. Item 8 on the agenda is public hearings. 8A is to hold a public hearing and consider approval of ordinance O2019-42 for an amendment to Title 12, Zoning Ordinance Chapter 4, use charts to amend the drinking establishments with less than 50% food sales, and Section 12-4-3, use charts to align with the new TABC, Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission rules, and Title 12 Zoning Ordinance. Chapter 1, enacting provisions to amend related definitions, MCA 2019-0001. Welcome, Mr. Hamrick.
Thank you, sir. Stan Hamrick, City Planner, Evening Council Mayor. This is in response to some queries that we've been getting. We get a lot of folks coming interested in opening business here in Weatherford. One that we've had 2 or 3 inquiries on are brew pubs. We were looking at the general plan and at the downtown area and some things that we could do to make some improvements. We're looking at, under the current rules, that we would possibly have to do conditional use permits. But the general plan is calling for the downtown area and certain other areas, namely up and down the interstate, for regional activity centers and entertainment centers and the such. So we thought instead of going in and taking piece by piece as we went through, we might want to go ahead and change the rules and update those to not only accommodate the general plan, but to fall in line with the current TABC rules and definitions for certain drinking establishments, including brew pubs. So essentially, this is going through our use charts and our definitions and bringing the brew pub definition as opposed to the older microbrewery definition up to par, and then looking at the private club situation and bringing that just in line with the general retail drinking establishment definition. As far as the brew pubs go, we want to change that from conditional use permit in the CBD area to and in the C2, which is the commercial interstate area, which is where, again, our entertainment centers and our retail centers are, or regional activity centers are, to allow brew pubs in those areas by right. But if it's going to be on Main Street, Fort Worth Highway, Palo Pinto, those types of corridors, maybe we want to go ahead and do a conditional use permit on those. And then continue to allow the drinking establishments where we already do. So we're not making any change on that, just simply changing the definition.
Questions for Mr. Hamrick before we hold our public hearing? Thank you, sir. This time we'll open a public hearing on item 8A specifically. If there's anybody that would like to come forward and speak on this item, please do so at this time. Seeing none, we will close the public hearing on item 8A. Any comments or questions for Mr. Hamrick before we call for a motion on the item? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion at this time. Motion for approval by Mayor Pro Tem Wilder, second by Jeff Robinson. Any discussion before we call for a vote? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote at this time. Please indicate yea or nay when the opportunity presents itself. Item 8A passes unanimously. Item 8B, hold a public hearing on proposed ad valorem tax rate of 0.49 cents per 100 valuation, including 0.3414 per 100 value for operations and a 0.1486 for interest and sinking debt service. Welcome, Mr. Kyle Lester.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Kyle Lester, Finance Director. Tonight is the first of 3 public hearings we have in conjunction with our FY20 budget proposal. 2 of those hearings are on the tax rate. The proposed rate, of course, is 49 cents per $100 of assessed value, as the mayor mentioned. The third hearing is going to be on our budget in general. Both of these second hearings will be on next council meeting, that is September 10th, 2019, for anyone who wanted to make it tonight but could not. However, tonight will be the first hearing on our tax rate, and I will go ahead and turn it over to the council.
All righty, at this time we'll open up a public hearing on item 8B specifically. If there's anybody who'd like to come forward and speak on the item, please come and do so at this time. 8B. Hearing none, we will close the public hearing on item 8B. Item 9 on the agenda is regular agenda items. 9A is consider a final plat including waivers from certain requirements of Weatherford Municipal Code Title 11 Subdivision Ordinance, including Section 11-3 1C4, 2 points of access from public road to the subdivision, Section 11-3-1H2, maximum of 20% of Collector Street fronted by residential lots, Section 11-3-10, maximum block length of 1,600 feet, Section 11-3-1P, maximum cul-de-sac length of 600 feet, Section 11-3-9A, connection to the city's water system, Section 11-3-9B, connection to city's wastewater collection and treatment system. Section 11-5-5A, improvement to substandard arterial street and future collector street. And Section 11-5-7A1, side rear yard screening along existing and future collector or above roadways for the 43 lot Stagecoach Ranch addition located on North Farm to Market Road 51, near its intersection with Misty Ridge Lane, and being 190.9 acres situated in the William W. Rowe Survey, abstract number 2165, and the Jacob Aaron Survey, abstract number 15, in the extraterritorial jurisdiction of the city of Weatherford, Parker County, Texas, SBD 2018-0037.
Thank you, Mayor.
Y'all enjoyed your nap during that.
Thank you, Stan Hamrick, City Planner. So I started out here with a slide to kind of show you the proximity to the city limits. So what you see down in the far corner there is the city limits. To the front gate of this project from our nearest water line on Main Street is a little over, or right at 2.25 miles. So it's way out on the edge of our ETJ. The developer is a developer we've worked with before, the engineer, and they wanted to come in and work with us on this project since it does straddle our ETJ line. So obviously utilities and the required waivers on that were an immediate issue, but with the size of the lots and the distance from the city limits, staff is supporting those waivers. The additional waivers are primarily to do with the road system. The road system has been run through the county commissioners and has sought their approval. The Applicant is actually working really well with everyone on this. We have, I'll show you here, this is the kind of plat put all together, because I know it's a little difficult to see in the packet with all those different pages. So I put it all together for you here to see. You see the ETJ line there in red and how this straddles that project. You also see a couple areas there in yellow. The one that kind of runs north-south is in consideration of a future collector street, minor arterial street that is shown on the county's transportation master plan. And so they're going to allow for 60 feet in there in the future. It's currently going to be shown as an easement. That way the property owners to either side can enjoy the use of that property until such time as a road may be needed there. Also, if you'll see the little inset there to the north, they have provided the normal 60-foot local county road right-of-way dedication through the middle. But the green area that you see there on either side is where they've dedicated an additional 20-foot for roadway easement because that is a major arterial running east-west on the county's transportation master plan. And so they're allowing for that in the future if needed to go through there at a total for 100-foot width. And then at the far end there, you see an additional 50-foot on either side for those lots to extend that all the way to the edge of the development to allow that project to go all the way from Main Street through to the ultimate end of the development there as a, future arterial street through there if needed. Really, the only other substantial waiver required is that normally on major streets like that, we don't like a lot of lots fronting on those. In this particular case, due to the length of time before those roads were built to that level and the low density in this subdivision, staff is supporting that waiver. Other than that, everything else meets our requirements. We're here for your approval.
Questions for staff on item 9A before we call for a motion? Hearing none, we'll call for a motion at this time. I do see a motion for approval by Mayor Pro Tem Wilder, second by Jeff Robinson. Any discussion before we call for a vote? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote at this time on item 9A. (9A) passes unanimously. 9B, consider request for waivers only from certain requirements of the Weatherford Municipal Code, Title 11, Subdivision Ordinance, including Section 11-3-1C6, dedication of right-of-way for existing perimeter streets, and Section 11-5-5A, improvement to substandard major arterial street and substandard minor arterial street for the 0.916 acre W&B Addition minor plat, a replat of lots 1 through 4, Block 13 of Carter's Addition, Volume 329, page 618, and located at 1214 North Main Street, City of Weatherford, Parker County, Texas, SBD 2019-0024. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Stan Hemrick, City Planner. This is currently a working minor plat. There's still a couple items they're working on the document to get to us, but it's substantially complete. They are here asking for waivers only tonight, primarily to the dedication and improvement of 4th Street and Main Street corridors there. To make those dedications and improvements at this time would basically erode into the project fairly substantially. They're not really needed at this time, so staff was comfortable going ahead and recommending those waiver requests at this time. We will pick those up in the future when we have those as capital projects.
Questions for staff on item 9B before we call for a motion?
I do.
Cleveland.
The improvements, what are we trying to waive? So this is our main corridor. These are all streets that we're going in and we're putting in curb and gutter and doing improvements on our capital side. What improvements are we trying to remove from this project by that waiver?
So really, we're just not expanding the right-of-way, so any improvements and things that we've got planned for the foreseeable future are going to keep those roads at the level they're currently at. We'll just make, obviously improvements, like you said, curb and gutter, patching up the asphalt, doing those types of things. We're not expanding those roads and making them wider.
So we're not asking for the right-of-way width, but we're still going to expect that they bring curb and gutter, sidewalks, things like that to standard.
I believe anything that's substandard, which is in pretty good shape in that area.
Hello, Council. Bill Smith, civil engineer. The roadways in that area already have curb and gutter and sidewalks and things like that. What that refers to is the ultimate section of like an arterial street. So that would mean bringing that curb out like another lane. So that wouldn't be something that we would require for this type of project.
Okay. That was my clarification. I just want to make sure that we still ended up with the same curb and gutter sidewalks and stuff that we
Yes.
needed, but I understand the right-of-way deal, so that makes sense.
Great question, glad you asked it. Any others? Call for a motion at this time on item 9B. Motion for approval by Curtis Tucker, second by Jeff Robinson. Any other questions before we call for a vote? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote at this time on item 9B. Passes unanimously. 9C is consider request for waivers only from certain requirements of the Weatherford Municipal Code Title 11 subdivision ordinance, including Section 11-2-4I-17, minimum finished floor elevations for lot adjacent to floodplain, Section 11-4-2C, flood management area required, Section 11-4-2D, ownership and maintenance of the FMA, Section 11-3-1C6, dedication of right-of-way for future street, Section 11-3-1C6, dedication of the right-of-way for improvements to existing perimeter street, Section 11-3-9A, connection to city's water system, Section 11-3-9B, connection to the city's wastewater collection and treatment system, and Section 11-5-5A, improvement to substandard major arterial street and future arterial street for the two-lot Barber Farms minor plat being 38.35 acres at 2400 Ranger Highway, situated in and being a portion of the James Long Survey, abstract number 800 in the extraterritorial jurisdiction of the City of Weatherford, Parker County, Texas, SBD 2019-0035. Mr. Hammond.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, Stan Hamrick, City Planner. This is a minor plat that's coming through. We are looking at a number of waivers that have been requested. For simplicity's sake, I think most of the waivers that we are supporting are pretty self-explanatory. They're pretty normal for plats that are outside in our ETJ. So I'll focus on the ones that we are not recommending for approval. The first series are the minimum finished floor elevations for lots adjacent to a floodplain. That one typically requires a flood study. This is an unstudied area of the floodplain. There is a study that establishes those base flood elevations so that we know what those need to be on the adjacent lots. Thrown this area up here to show you how that fits, but that is a requirement of the FEMA and FERM regulations. Areas where an FMA is required, that is where we would put a flood management area easement around that floodplain area there for access if any reason the city or the county need to get in there and help do anything with that flood area, and then ownership and maintenance of that FMA easement. So staff is not recommending a waiver of those requirements. The additional one is the waiver for dedication of right-of-way for future improvements to Ranger Highway. Very similar to the previous one. On this particular one, we're simply asking for the dedication for the right-of-way, for that to be the future road width that it's going to be. There are no improvements in the way for that dedication, but we are okay with no need for improving of Ranger Highway at this time. The other right-of-ways and everything associated with any waiver requests are these here to the that you see to the west.
Questions for staff on item 9C, Council? All righty. Call for a motion this time. Councilman Cleveland, would you mind stating your motion
Yes,
for the
sir.
record?
I make a motion that we recommend, that we approve the waivers from Section 11.3.1C6 for future street only, Section 11.3.9A, Section 11.3.9B, and Section 11.5.5A, and deny waivers Section 11.2.4I-17, Section 11.4.2C, Section 11.4.2D, and Section 11.3.1C6 for existing perimeter street.
Motion presented by Councilman Cleveland. Mayor Pro Tem, is your second still stand?
So let me just make sure that is just you're approving just the right-of-way. I mean, just not the improvement to Ranger, but we are including in the denial the right-of-way. Is that?
So if, and I believe I heard that Councilmember Cleveland was doing it pretty much what staff had recommended, correct? So we are recommending that we go ahead and get the right-of-way for Ranger Highway. The waiver to that was requested, but that we're not requiring them to improve Ranger Highway.
Okay, I wanted to just make sure we were all on the same page.
On the record, Councilman Cleveland, you stand. Mayor Pro Tem on the second, you stand?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Any further discussion on the item before we call for a vote? Thanks for the clarification, staff. Call for a vote this time on item 9C. Indicate yea or nay at this time, please. Item 9C passes unanimously. Item 9D, consider a final plat for the one-lot Grand Adventure Addition located at 206510 Top Road and described as being 4 acres situated in the T.W. Bell Survey, abstract number 166, and the J.L. DeTeese Survey, abstract number 369. City of Weatherford, Parker County, Texas, SBD 2019-0038. Welcome back.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, Stan Hamrick, City Planner. So this is the final plat. We're working on this one. It simply needed a sewer line extension. They've gotten that completed, have the final plat in. We have one minor little clerical thing that they needed to fix when we started the agendas on this item, but that is a minor thing. We'll have that done before we certify the plat. Other than that, staff recommends approval. I believe the owner applicant is here if you have any questions for him.
I do have a speaker card filled out by Mr. Pennington. Sir, were you here just if we had questions, or do you want to come forward?
Quick phrase.
Okay, if you would, let us have your name and address once you get settled up there, and you'll have 3 minutes max.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm Lonnie Pennington, live at 110 Candle Ridge Court, Weatherford, Texas. I'm the general manager of Grand Adventure. Just wanted to let you know I've been looking forward to this. 5 years in the making. So go-karts, mini golf, arcade, and virtual reality all opening up at start. Hopefully some more attractions coming in a year or two. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm also available for questions if any of the council members have any questions.
Questions
Thanks.
for Mr. Pennington? Thank you for being available, sir. We appreciate it. Welcome to Weatherford.
Thank you.
All righty, I'll call for a motion. We do have a motion on the floor for approval by Mr. Robinson, second by Mayor Pro Tem Wilder. Any discussion or question before we call for a vote?
That is with condition, correct, Jeff?
Correct. We'll call for a vote at this time on the item. Thanks for the clarification. Indicate yea or nay, please. Passes unanimously. 9E on the agenda is consider authorizing the city manager to execute a supplemental agreement to an existing professional services contract with Pacheco Coke LLC for the interstate access justification report at Interstate Highway 20 and Bethel Road. Sharon Hayes. Terry Hughes.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Terry Hughes, Director of Capital Transportation. Weatherford contracted with Pacheco Coke to conduct an interstate access justification study for the on-off ramps at I-20 just east of Bethel Road. The IAJ was included in TERS #1 project list because the ramping system's importance to traffic safety, i.e. Weatherford High School, economic development in the area. There's a lot of undeveloped area potential there. And having an IAJ would position the city of Weatherford and the community to pursue funding for construction from the North Central Texas Council of Governments for the interstate, for the ramping systems. The initial work for the IAJ was based on a ramp design that would serve the area immediately adjacent to the Bethel Road intersection. And I've kind of outlined in light orange the area of the initial work and survey work. The initial report and schematic design was presented to TxDOT, the Federal Highway Administration, for review. This is a copy of the schematic that was presented to them. There was a lot of base work and some other information that was presented, but I wanted you to see what was initially there. It is just a ramping system and ramping system alone. After their review, TxDOT and FHWA expanded the schematic design requirements to include auxiliary lanes between Bethel Road and the ramps for South Main, between Bethel Road and the ramps on South Main exits. This shows an extension of both of those, what they refer to as auxiliary lanes, to connect the ramps, future ramps and existing ramps together so that you would have an auxiliary lane. They also ask that we include, or I used the term ask, they required that we include an additional lane for the westbound frontage road from the off-ramp along over to FM 1884. The report also requires that we expand our study to the west to South Bowie Drive, to the east to State Highway 171, to the north to South Main Street, and to the south to BB Fielder Drive. In other words, the areas I've outlined, they want us to explore, to do new traffic counts, do an analysis on how this ramping system will impact those intersections. So there's a lot of work that remains to be done from their point of view. The new design and the study area requirements expand the scope of the project, almost doubling the amount of work that we originally had anticipated doing. That's why we're asking for a supplement for the area to expand this study. The supplement amount is $208,544. That would bring our total commitment to the IAJ to $469,544. We do have money in the TERS program, TERS number 1, from the initial seed money that we could use to cover this supplement.
Great presentation. Questions for Mr. Hughes on item 9E? Hearing none, we'll call for a motion at this time.
I do have a question.
Mr. Robinson.
So we need to broaden the scope. I'll get to the question. We need to broaden the scope to see how those ramps would impact these other locations. But so if we go through that, what do you feel like the likelihood is that they're going to approve and build these ramps?
I believe they will approve the interstate access justification. There's still a lot of work to be done on top of that, design and other things. What we would do with the IAJ, that positions Weatherford to pursue long-term funding from North Central Texas Council of Governments and Texas Department of Transportation. What actually happens is federal money is sent to the state, and then it is sent to to COG, and then COG distributes that money to the local districts and areas, and that's how we would pursue that money.
So as far as time frame, and I understand these things happen fairly slowly, but
we're modeling everything on the year 2025, if that tells you what we're looking at time frame wise.
We'll go like 2021 then?
well, I can tell you for a lot of years that people that are coming from the east side of town going to the high school would love to have seen that ramp, and we're not going to do anything but grow. So I think it's as far as keeping congestion down in the intersections there at Highway 51 and or South Main Street, that I think it's very important. So.
Yes, sir.
Great question and good feedback, Mr. Robinson. Any other comments or questions? Okay, we'll call for a motion at this time. Motion for approval by Jeff Robinson, second by Kevin Cleveland. Any discussion before we call for a vote? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote at this time on item 9E. Okay, yea or nay, please. Passes unanimously. Item 10 on the agenda, future agenda items. Sharon Hayes, anything?
Yes, sir.
Council? All righty, we'll move to item 11, citizen comments on non-agenda items. Any cards or anybody here for non-agenda items? Hearing none, we'll move to item 12, work session items. 12A is to hold a work session to discuss the feasibility and options for a hotel convention center. Sharon Hayes, I got it right this time.
You got it. Yes, sir. We started talking with you guys about this late January, early February. We had an opportunity to take some legislation forward that would help us to be able to finance a hotel convention center. I think we kept you briefed on it as we moved throughout the legislative session. That law was signed by the governor, and so we are ready to move forward. We do have a timeline on that, so we don't want to waste any time. But we have asked Trent Petty today with Petty & Associates to be here to help Where's Trent?
They just went to get him.
They went looking for him.
Okay.
Nobody
Well,
walks in. When he walks in, everybody start clapping. Let's
Okay.
take this opportunity and make the best of it.
Trent has done, and of course, he's had a lot of experience in different things, but he has done projects like this for other cities. So he's going to walk through the timeline today. He has prepared an RFP. We are ready to go out and start looking for that partner. We've also had some conversations with some folks about different locations and property. And so he'll talk a little bit about what that looks like going forward and what we need to do in order to get to that part. So I can keep talking if you want. But this is something that we're excited about. This is, we're interested in really bringing in a flagship hotel and something that this community can be proud of, and a convention center that meets the needs. Thank you so much, Trent.
Gentlemen, introducing you to the great Trent Petty.
I'm running out of things to say.
Not late, making
You're
an
doing
entrance.
really good.
Welcome, sir. You had no idea how efficient we would be tonight with our time, did you?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I apologize. I was literally right across the hall. This is a neat opportunity for Weatherford. I want to give you some background on this opportunity. Back in 2003, the legislature created a new opportunity to improve convention and tourism bureaus in the state of Texas by allowing state hotel occupancy taxes, state sales taxes, and state alcoholic beverage taxes to be reimbursed to cities that were willing to build a convention center hotel. There was very few cities in that original legislation. Every legislative session since then, there has been more of a push to expand more cities. Obviously, from the city's perspective, it was kind of unfair if my neighbor had the opportunity to attract these hotels and I didn't. So there's been push every legislative session to expand this legislation. Weatherford was fortunate in this last session in that you were included in this expansion. So the law that we're talking about is Chapter 351-102E of the Texas Tax Code. It basically says that if you as a city build under strict conditions a hotel and convention center, then the state will, for 10 years, reimburse their hotel motel taxes, sales taxes, and alcoholic beverage taxes to your project to help you build that convention center. Now, here are some of the conditions. First of all, the land that exists for these projects must be owned by the city. All right? Doesn't mean the city has necessarily to go out there and write a check for it, but at the end of the day, all said and done, the city must own the land. The city must also own the convention center. This is not something that you can go build and incentivize some other developer to come out here and build, because you're going to own the convention center. You do not have to own the hotel. You may, but you do not have to. But you must own the land under the hotel. So there is a strict requirement in qualifying for these dollars that say, from the city's perspective, you are very serious about attracting a convention center hotel. Now, I want to distinguish these hotel convention centers from what most of you have come to see and expect in today's hotel industry. We see a great deal of 110 to 115 room preferred service hotels popping up all over Texas. It's very unusual now, as a matter of fact, to see a full service hotel with a convention center. This legislation was not designed for a city to just go and find another preferred service hotel. Frankly, there would be no market benefit in that, and there would be no financial benefit in that. So when we talk about this project, we have to kind of set our heights on a different scale when it comes to what we would expect for our community. The intent is that this is a convention center that would have a significant impact on your community and dramatically increase tourism in your community. The intent would be a hotel that would feed with this convention center in a way that would provide services that you do not have today, to be able to really expand and make Weatherford a special place when it comes to tourism. So set your sights higher than what you see being built on every interstate in the state of Texas right now. This is not just a preferred service hotel. As a result, there is a greater degree of benefit to the city when you do attract that larger project with that convention center hotel. First of all, those room rates are going to be higher. You will see room rates that could range between $150 to $200 a night in this kind of a project we're describing, as opposed to $95 to $135, which you'll see in your typical hotels.
You're also going to see dramatic increases in convention and tourism work. That means the city will take an active effort to increase tourism because we're going to have a facility that is specially designated to accommodate tourism. And so we'll have to be very, active in making certain that we keep that facility full. But the financial impacts of this are really crucial when you start considering the fact that absent the state putting their money back into this process, this would all be on the city. There's nothing in this law that changes what you could do as a city on your own. But it's very difficult to build a hotel or convention center on a city budget alone. Not because you don't have the money, but because the return on investment is so marginal. Convention centers are typically considered a loss leader. They are a very difficult thing to build. That's why you don't see them being built every day. So the thing that makes this legislation different, and the key provision, is the fact that we are basically going to have state money coming in to help pay for this. Now, that will vary with every project how much money we're talking about. If we're talking about a 250-room hotel with, 100,000 square feet of convention center, that could easily be, over a 10-year period, $12 to $15 million in reimbursements. If you're talking about a facility that's half that size, it might be half that dollar. So I can't tell you exactly how much money we're talking about, but the bottom line is, from the city's perspective, it's found money, because it's money that you could not have accessed any other way, and it's money that is specifically designated to be able to accomplish the hotel convention bureau in your community. So the state portion is the key provision. That's what all this is about. The legislation is how many cities get to get the state money back. Now, there are very, very specific provisions, not only in the law, but also in the comptroller's guidelines as to how this money can be spent. And these provisions have gotten tougher and tougher each session. This last session especially, there was a major crackdown on the interpretation of what sales tax could be included in this. Because the original interpretation was, if I'm within a 1,000-foot area of the 1,500-foot area of the hotel and convention center, and if the convention center is within 1,000 feet of the hotel, I could take all of the sales tax generated, all the state sales tax generated within that perimeter, and plug it back into the project. That is not the current interpretation. So we've seen reductions in what you can count on relative to the state's reimbursement for sales tax, but the hotel motel tax piece is still pretty much just as it was. Those dollars qualify, and you would be able to pull those dollars back out. You realize what you have, the state occupancy tax, the sales tax, and the alcoholic beverage tax, again, these are all in addition to what you collect today. You may still add your increment to that process as well, but you wouldn't have the state increment were it not for the expanded legislation. So in order to qualify for this project, we have essentially a date, a deadline. That deadline had been, prior to this legislative session, 2020. That has changed. We are now looking at 2023. So we have to have what would be a qualified project. That means we have to have an agreement with a developer that would build a hotel conforming to this qualified project hotel definition prior to September 1st, 2023. Now, that sounds like a long time. It's not. That is, in hotel years, that's tomorrow. So this is a process that has to start very quickly, because it can easily take 6 months to a year to get a project like this negotiated. In many cases, a community will already have a site designated and may already have a hotel operator that approaches the city to say, we really want this in our community, and the city is in a position of responding to that. When you look at that timeline, it's obviously much, much quicker than a timeline where the city is having to initiate this process all the way from identifying where the land is to who the hotel flag is going to be, to where the convention center is going to be, and all of these pieces. So there's a lot more to it when we're starting from where we are starting right now in Weatherford. But nonetheless, this is a different level of project. It's something that Weatherford has wanted many, many years. I've had the pleasure of visiting with each one of you when it comes to your vision and perspectives on future economic development. And tourism and economic development are always key, and righteously so, when it comes to where we are headed. Weatherford does not have the product that we're talking about on the ground here today. You don't have anything really close to the product that we're talking about today. So this is a major, major step for the community. You all know that when a hotel of this size comes in, the revenues directly from the hotel are significant, but these never occur in a vacuum on their own. This type project means there would be ancillary mixed uses associated with it, more than likely restaurants, more than likely small neighborhood retail, boutique retail, maybe office, commercial office. Depending on how big the project is and the vision for the project, we're not talking only about the hotel convention center aspect of the benefit. We're talking about probably an entire area that would create a new economic driver for the city of Weatherford. So assuming that we could comply with all of those rules and get all of this done by September 1st, 2023, Weatherford would be eligible for these reimbursements. I mentioned that the convention center you have to own, you do not have to operate it. The way this typically works is the city would provide essentially the tax exempt bonds through the state enabled legislation for this facility to be built, but there would be a hotel operator that would lease this facility and basically operate the facility on behalf of the city. Now, there are cities that choose to operate and own their own convention center. That's an option to you. It is a tough task, it's an expensive task, and it's one that if you don't have a great deal of experience in, it's pretty risky for the city to assume they're going to operate this on their own. A much safer route is when you look for your hotel flag, your hotel operator, that you couch this in a manner that they would also operate the hotel, the convention center. So you have the same operator for the hotel as you have for the convention center. Much more efficient model than trying to build the infrastructure necessary to support this thing and being run by the city. When we talk about the flag, you all mostly know, I think in the hotel business, the developer that comes in to build a hotel is not necessarily Marriott or Holiday Inn or Hilton. It is an individual that ultimately develops a project that then seeks a franchise that will come and put that facility in. So there are a lot of different players when it comes to writing an agreement for this type of project. Normally you will have an agreement that will cite the city's responsibility, the landowner's responsibility, the hotel developer, a non-hotel developer, and a hotel operator at minimum. Now, in rare cases, you might have one master developer that can bring all of these points to the table, but that's a very rare circumstance. Much more likely is going to be a situation where you have a multi-party agreement that stipulates the responsibilities of each of these groups. Now, Weatherford is fortunate in that you have some tracts of land that would be very, very compatible with this type project. And you also have a lot of internal master development talent. What you don't necessarily have is a hotel project with a master developer attached to it. So as we walk through this process, we're going to start kind of illuminating a couple of options that you have in terms of how you pursue this, because one track would assume that there would be a developer here that would bring a project to you. Another track would assume that you would actually go out there and do a request for proposals that would bring a master developer to the table to work with you on that. So we'll kind of walk through that. When we talk about a master developer, what that essentially means is someone that will go out and secure the land and that will take responsibility for entitling the land and be responsible for building all of the infrastructure in the project. That master developer may also be a hotel developer, but not necessarily. It is not uncommon that you have a master developer that would develop a large parcel with all the non-development uses, and then there would be specifically a hotel developer that would come in and take care of the hotel convention center part. Either way is fine. It doesn't matter, but recognize there's going to be multiple parties at the table. In the case where we would have a project brought to you from a local landowner or a local developer, they would be responsible for securing the land, not you. You would be responsible for making certain that the deal reflected the ultimate requirement of ownership relative to the convention center and the hotel land. So a parcel of that would become city-owned land, even though the master developer would be responsible for buying all the land. There's no practical solution here that would say, okay, the city needs to go out there and issue bonds and write a check for a huge parcel of land when we have no idea whether or not it's feasible yet to get the hotel on it. So the order of this becomes very important. So if we had a master developer that brought that, it would put us in a position of responding to that and putting together the deal points and the financial elements that would make this project work. If we didn't have a developer that had land in the community that was obvious for a project like this, your second option is to send out a request for proposals. And that would go to master developers with hotel management expertise, hotel convention center expertise. Those folks are out there. They're large firms. There will not be 100 of them that would apply, but there would probably be a dozen or so more. Had it not been for the state law allowing you to do what you can do, you may have had no responses whatsoever to that. This becomes an important incentive for a hotel developer because they recognize just how much equity is represented by the state's willingness to reimburse these dollars. It could be 10, 15% of the entire equity on a project. So that's what makes the development community stand up and take notice. In Weatherford, our challenge would be notifying them that we have to find a site, first of all, and then we have to be able to negotiate a deal that would bring a flag to Weatherford. That will involve a hotel feasibility study. And that's not a hotel feasibility study that I do or that you do. That is a professional hotel feasibility study that all of the major franchises would have to rely on before they would even give the site a second look. So the location of the site, the market around the site, what the neighboring hotel, market looks like, the competition, all those things go into that hotel feasibility study. So expect when you offer an RFP, expect that RFP to include a response that would entail either them paying for that hotel feasibility study and being reimbursed for it, or the city being asked to pay for that study. That study is probably going to be somewhere between $25,000 and $40,000. So it's a significant study, but it is absolutely required if you're going to be able to attract one of these major flags. So we have two potential routes that this project can go. The fastest is if a local landowner / developer comes to the city and says, hey, I've got the site, I've got the vision, I'm ready to go entitle the property, I'm willing to make a deal with the city to sell them off the portions they need to get the hotel and convention center. If the city is willing to enter into an agreement with us to reimburse these state funds and the necessary city funds to be able to make this happen. No question that's the fastest route. We don't know if that exists or not. There's been some positive discussions already. There's been communications about this, but we don't know and can't stand here tonight that we have such a developer. If we don't, then your decision will be, do we go through the RFP process? And I've developed a draft RFP. I've sent to staff. Staff has that. They're looking at that now. It is not brain surgery. It's basically just saying, here are the dollars we're willing to offer. Here's the product that we need to happen. Here's what we need you to do to partner with the city to make that happen. So those are the options that we essentially look at. If we do end up with a master developer that is willing to secure this land and take this major step with us, you will have to enter into an agreement with them that will stipulate what you are willing to do if they build a hotel conference center. And that's the development agreement. And that's essentially where you will articulate essentially a pro forma with the developer to say, if these dollars are produced, these dollars will be reimbursed. There's really no circumstance here where the city is being asked to go out there and put down general fund debt or put down huge amounts of cash. That's not what's contemplated. All of these are contemplated in terms of the city reimbursing revenue streams that are not there today. Therefore, they are performance-based. And that's the assumption that you would have going into this, is this is not going to become an obligation of the general fund. This is going to become a reimbursement mechanism paid for with new revenues that we would not have had were it not for the construction of this hotel facility. So from a financial standpoint, it is not going to be a dramatic impact on your budget to find out if there's going to be someone interested in this. It's not going to be a dramatic impact on your budget to enter into an agreement. What will be a dramatic impact on your budget that we'll have to look through very carefully is once we establish that relationship with the master developer, the hotel convention center is built, the operations of that convention center and generating enough revenue to make sure that the M&O portion is paid for through the revenue streams is a key element of this. And that's why you have to have a professional group that knows hotel convention business business. And so, that's the key that we have to be thinking about is what are not only the capital impacts, what are the long-term operating impact decisions on us. In no case would they be general fund obligations. These would be structured as enterprise funds that would essentially be generated from the revenues from within the fund and not a general fund obligation. The rest of the pieces are really the same between whether or not we go a master developer or whether we go with an RFP. But those stipulations will differentiate how far we go. One of the things that you'll have to spend a great deal of time doing is looking at site selection. Because obviously, when a developer comes in and says, I need X number of acres, I need this level of access, we need to make sure this infrastructure is in place, that's when the city really has to do the homework. Because you have to make sure that we can put in place the necessary infrastructure to support a project like that. That can be done through a number of ways. We've already talked about the revenue stream coming from the project, but it can also be done through a reinvestment zone. You can do a tax increment reinvestment zone and generate an ad valorem increment toward the project if you want to. There's 380 agreements. There are a number of economic development tools that you would have at your disposal to really execute the project to make sure that it's what Weatherford needs. So, master developer secured, fastest way, easiest way, least expensive way for the city. The RFP for the master developer, I think I've covered it. You may end up with a non-hotel developer in tandem with this RFP. You may have a hotel developer that says, look, I'm going to do the hotel convention center, but I want to partner with X entity for the rest of it because we're not willing to take down 50, 60, 70 acres of land because we don't need that much for a hotel. So that's where we have to work very closely through the RFP process. You would interview those candidates just like you would any other professional service. And you would select from among them the one that you think is most likely to be able to make a deal with you. Then you would enter into negotiations to secure the agreement and ultimately require both sides be tied to the time frame and to the financial commitments. So that is how we essentially stipulate those two differences and those two options for you. Our recommendation, just where we are tonight and knowing where the circumstances are time-wise, if there are existing landowners in Weatherford that are interested in this process, we need to give that opportunity to them to hopefully mature this in a way that's much quicker and easier for everybody. If they don't, then we have to take sort of the bull by the horns, if you will, if you want to pursue this. And you'll have to begin initiating discussions not only in terms of finding a hotel developer, but in terms of finding land for the project. So hopefully we find a master developer locally that is interested in either partnering with a hotel or master developing the project themselves, a large landowner that's excited about this, that wants to see this happen, passionate about Weatherford, passionate about what this project means, and we get down the road. Because this can be, in that circumstance, this can be in a development agreement within a year without problem. The latter solution, we could be 2 years before we get to that point. So that's a thumbnail sketch of where we are relative to this option. It's an important opportunity for Weatherford. This does not happen in every city in Texas. All of them wish they could. Many cities this last session pushed very hard to get this legislation expanded to them. I think you owe it to yourself, to the community, for the work that you did lobbying for this change, to do everything you can to try to now see it come to fruition. So we will assist as necessary through the RFP process. We have done these pro formas before. We're comfortable looking at those numbers and working through the development agreement. And with that, I'll answer any questions. I'm sure there's a lot because I went through it quickly, Mayor.
Questions for Mr. Petty?
I have two. The first question is, how long of a time frame should we give our developers this opportunity? That's the first question, so that we need to know when should we start looking to do the RFP if we can't find that?
Great question, and I think to some extent what we have to do is work backwards from our deadline. And I think we love to be able to say to our local development community, take all the time you need and call us when you have something. I don't think we have that luxury. Knowing that we are going to be in a situation where this deadline will be hard and fast and will not change, we probably need an answer from a master developer before the end of 2019. I think that's a reasonable amount of time between now and then to work through the details. Beyond that, I think we have to be really, honest with ourselves and say, look, if it's not going to happen, we can't waste too much more time.
My second question is, what happens after the 10 years?
The state's reimbursement stops. You may continue, and most of the pro formas reflect a continuation of some portion of contribution of your own hotel motel tax to the project until it's paid for, potentially even sales tax within the project. And from our perspective, all of those dollars are performance-based. So the sky is really the limit when it comes to how we would structure the reimbursement agreements, because they are completely separate from the state's reimbursement. So the state would stop, but your reimbursements and your project with the developer could continue as long as you see necessary.
So you could basically do a tiered structured, long-term structured event.
You would, no question about it, because you will not get the project completely built and paid for in 10 years. It will take at least 20 years for a project of this magnitude to be able to create enough reimbursement to pay interest, principal on a project of this size for this long. This could easily be, a $60 to $100 million project. So it's a major, and you would not, frankly, want anything less. If you're going to go to this effort, this needs to be a game changer for Weatherford. And so it does require a tiered approach to the incentives.
Other questions for Mr. Petty? A follow-up question to Mayor Pro Tem Wilder is related to the giving the local developers to the end of this year to make a commitment. So qualify for me what that commitment is. Is that taking down property, contract to do so? What does that sound like to you?
Good question, Mayor. This is my opinion. From the council's perspective, this is something you're going to need to decide. But my opinion of that would be the land is secured and the deal points have been agreed to. If the land is secured, that's number one. The deal points can be agreed to relatively quickly once the land is secured. But if we don't have land secured before the end of the calendar year, I think that's problematic for us.
Thanks for the clarification.
Yes, sir.
Other questions? Comments? We appreciate you taking the time to be here tonight, sir.
Sorry I was late. If I didn't lose my master badge,
You weren't late. You just made a really grand appearance. There's a vast difference between the two. You've been here a long time today. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate
Thank
you. Item.
Before we
yes,
go, there was one thing I did forget to mention, but Representative Phil King was really instrumental in helping us get this through. It took a lot of shepherding, and he did a great job on that. So.
Duly noted and well spoken. Item 12B, hold a work session to discuss the fiscal year 20 proposed general fund budget. Mr. Lester, welcome.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm Kyle Lester, Finance Director, and tonight, as the Mayor mentioned, we have a work session to continue our discussions on the FY20 General City Budget and tax rate. In the interest of time and to really get down to the discussion portion of this evening, I really only have one slide. That's right, it is my greatest presentation I've ever given. Our budget, bottom line, what we want to do as a staff, as a council, as a city, is build a strong community. We believe the budget that we have presented to you in the last work session does exactly that. This budget is balanced at a rate of 48.79 cents. For this tax rate, we are keeping our service levels consistent. We're offering our citizens round-the-clock public safety, quality community development, premier leisure services, among a plethora of others that we offer. In your books, you have been given a breakdown of the service enhancement that are included with our proposals. Any vehicle equipment replacements. We do have 2 new positions we're requesting. All of these are designed to put Weatherford in the most advantageous position possible to maintain our quality of service. And finally, as per our work session on July 23rd, this budget includes 1 cent on our tax rate to fund a long overdue police and fire station. With that, I would like to go ahead and turn over to council for continuation of our discussion that we began during the last work session.
Well, thank you for the brief, informative presentation. Any questions, comments on this item? Well, we thank you. And before you mosey off, on behalf of the council and the citizens of Weatherford, we thank you for your service to Weatherford over the years.
Thank you very much,
We wish
sir.
you all the best, you and your family. And we're looking for a firm commitment that when you drive through Weatherford, you'll stop and say hi, stop and have lunch with us, and just know that we've appreciated your service over the years, sir.
I certainly will. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lester.
You will be missed, sir.
Very.
Yes.
Go do great things. Keep doing great things.
I do have one quick, not that quick, I'm
I
sorry.
thought you were brief today. What's going on here?
Now it's 2 slides.
We've got next council meeting, we will have a second and final public hearing on the tax rate, our first and final public hearing on the budget. We will need to get a decision from council on those outside agencies that will, whether or not we want to fund them and at what level. And then, of course, on the 24th, we will be adopting our FY20 budget. That's it, I promise.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. Item 13, executive session items. 13A, pursuant to Chapter 551, Texas Government Code VTCS, Open Meetings Law, in accordance with the authority contained in 551074, personnel matters to deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment duties, discipline or dismissal of a public officer, employee, city manager. Council will adjourn at 7:35 p.m., and we will go into executive session.